I've heard stories about people who maintain multiple residences. For example, maybe there's a person who has a house or a condo or an apartment in Los Angeles, and they also have one in New York. And one of the challenges I would imagine in maintaining a couple different residences is making sure you have all the stuff at both places. For example, if you cook in Los Angeles and you cook in New York, you're going to need pots and pans and ladles and all that kind of stuff. So if there's a specific pan that they use in Los Angeles, and he doesn't have that pan in New York, when he's in New York and he's going to cook, he might think, oh, I wish I had that pan. Well, how does that relate to vCenter in a vSphere environment? Well, we might have two data centers. We might have one in Los Angeles and we might have one in New York. So we could have an instance, for example, of vCenter server in LA and an instance of vCenter server in New York, or other parts geographically separate from each other. And there may be a need to have, for example, a template to deploy VMs from, and they may want that in Los Angeles and in New York. And if it was just one template, that's not too hard to manage. But if there's lots of templates and other files and ISO images and so forth that all need to be shared and coordinated, vSphere has given us an amazing opportunity to do that with a tool called a content library. And it's simply a library that we put content in. Templates, ISOs, and other resources that we might want to synchronize or make available between multiple vCenter servers. And it's basically pretty simple. First of all, we would create and publish a local library. So let's say in Los Angeles, we create a content library. And let's say we create a special content library that we're going to use to hold templates. And we name it templates underscore library. And then on that content library in LA, we'd simply specify that we want to publish it. And we'd probably also want to go ahead and click the checkbox that says we want to do authentication as well. When we publish our content library, it means other vCenter server instances could then go ahead and they could subscribe to ours. So for example, in New York, they could go ahead and subscribe to our content library called templates library. And then they could sync the content of that templates library from Los Angeles over to New York. So in New York, they wouldn't be able to add new content to the content library if they're a subscriber. It's just basically getting a replica of the content library of LA that then they can have and keep in New York. And there's also an option for a subscriber to go ahead and just get metadata regarding what's in that content library, and then if they need it, then they can go ahead and pull it down. So that's the two basic choices for a subscriber, is that they can pull it all down or just pull information about what's in that library and then download it on demand as needed. So as we start virtualizing more and more of everything, using content libraries to organize our resources like templates, and being able to share them between vCenter server instances makes it easier for us to know where to go for a specific resource. So what I'd like to do is walk you through step by step on how to create and publish and use a content library, and then I'd like you to reinforce what we've learned together in this nugget by doing the hands-on lab. So our configuration journey begins here on our Windows Management Workstation. So we have a shortcut over here in the upper left for the vSphere web client. We'll double click on that. We'll supply our username and password and click Login. Let's also go ahead and expand this to full screen so we can see a little bit more. So here in the vSphere web client, let's go ahead and hover over the home icon and then click on home from the drop-down. So on the home page, to create a content library, we have a couple of options of getting there. And they are, we could click here on content libraries, and that would get us there. Or we could click here on content libraries. And either one we choose will get us to the content libraries section. So we'll click on content libraries. And by default, we don't have any content libraries that are set up, so we'll create one by clicking on the icon to create a new content library. So we'll click on that little icon with the green plus symbol on it, and let's name this templates library. It's also asking us which vCenter server do we want to go ahead and keep this on. Now we only have one vCenter server. It's the vcsa.nuggetlab.com. So with that selected and the name of templates library set, we'll click on next. So what we're going to do on the Los Angeles side is we are going to create a content library. On the New York side, or the person who's going to copy the data, they would go ahead and they would subscribe to our content library. So we'd provide them the URL, we'd provide them the password for authentication, so that their subscribed library would copy and replicate what we have in ours. And so for the lab, we're going to go ahead and create a local content library. We will also publish it so that someone else can subscribe to it. And then we're going to click on the checkbox for Enable Authentication, and we'll put our lab password right here. And then we'll tab down, and we'll put in the confirmation of our password as well. And with that done, We'll click on Next. So for storage, we can put in an SMB or NFS server and path, or we can select a data store. So let's go ahead and use a data store. And then it gives us a choice of the data stores. So let's go ahead and use the network-based iSCSI data store. We'll select that and then click on Next. Here's a summary, and then we'll go ahead and click on Finish. And then what we want to do is give it a moment to go ahead and create that. We'll click on Recent Tasks, and it is done. It created the library. Fantastic. So we'll go ahead and minimize the Recent Tasks section. And then the next thing we need to do is put something in that library. And what I'd like to do for a demonstration is, let's go ahead and take our template that we created in a previous nugget, and let's put that template inside of this templates library. So let's navigate back to the home page. We'll hover on the home icon and then click on Home. And then let's click on VMs and Templates, which will put us on the VMs and Templates tab here. And then here's our template called Linux-1. And you know, I was thinking of something between this nugget and the previous one, and that is this. This template, if we select it and then click on Data Stores, this template is stored on a local data store on ESXi2. Now, is that okay? It'll work, but what happens if ESXi2 goes belly up and it's no longer available? Then we're going to lose the ability to deploy from this template. So what I'd like to do is, let's move the actual storage location for this template over to iSCSI, to a network-based solution that ESX1, 2, and 3 all have access to. So to migrate a virtual machine's storage to a different data store is really simple. However, this is a template, so the template's kind of locked in stone. So if we want to move the data store on the template, we need to convert it back to a VM. So we'll right-click on our template, Linux-1. From the drop-down, we'll say Convert to a virtual machine. It's asking us which ESXi host we want to use. I'm going to choose ESXi2, primarily because the local data store in ESXi2 is being used for its files. And then we'll click on Next, and then we'll click on Finish. And now it's converted back to a VM. So now that it's a VM, we could right-click on that VM. And then from the drop-down, we can say Migrate. And this VM is not powered on, it's powered off. And from the Migrate wizard, we can go ahead and specify what we want to do. So we can say, I want to change the storage only. So we'll click that radio button for Change Storage, which basically means move to a different data store regarding the files for that VM, and we'll click on Next. And now it's asking, where would you like to move it? These are the 3 data stores that ESXi2, the host, has access to. So let's choose a network-based data store. We're going to choose iSCSI-data store and click on Next. Actually, let me go back just one step because I want to make sure that we are going to do thin provisioned when that gets moved. So that's currently how it is. I just want to make darn sure it stays as thin provisioned, and we'll click on Next. So here's a summary, and we'll click on Finish, and that may take just a few minutes because it's got to move all the files off of the local ESXi2 data store and move it over to iSCSI. So if we click on Recent Tasks, we can go ahead and watch the progress right here, and we'll let that finish. Alright, so now that that's done, and I did speed that up just a little bit in editing, just so we wouldn't have to wait like the full minute for that to happen. And now that it's done, let me go ahead and re-minimize the recent tasks. And we want to convert this Linux-1 VM back to a template. So we'll right-click on Linux-1. From the drop-down, we'll select Template, and we'll select Convert to Template from the submenu. So we'll click on Convert to Template. We'll click on Yes to confirm. And it's done. So now with this Linux-1 template selected, if we look at the Data Stores tab, it's now on the iSCSI data store. Fantastic. So now that the template is quote-unquote perfect the way we want it, let's go ahead and right-click on that template, and let's go ahead and clone it over to our library. So to do that, from the drop-down menu, we're going to select Clone to Library. So we'll click on Clone to Library. We only have one library to choose from, because it's the one that we created a few moments ago. So we'll select the radio button next to templates_library. We can specify the template name. Let's call this Linux-1-from-library. And with that template name supplied, let's go ahead and click OK. And this is going to take several minutes to complete because it's effectively got to take that entire template and copy it to that content library. So if we go to Recent Tasks and select that, what it's doing, it is transferring all those files. And so we want to make sure that we allow this to complete before we go on to the next step. So we'll go ahead and minimize the recent tasks. We can now, if we wanted to, deploy a virtual machine from the template that's in our content library. Let's do that. So we'll hover over the home icon, and let's go ahead and from the drop down, let's select content libraries to go directly to the content library. So here's a list of our content libraries. We only have one, so we'll go ahead and click on the templates library. So here on the summary tab, it's showing us the data store involved. It's also in the navigator pane showing us that we have one template in this content library. So we can get there by clicking here on the left and then selecting the Linux one from library. And then we could right click from that template and say new VM from this template. Or if we go back to the templates library, we also have a tab up here on the top where we could click on templates and it would show us the template here as well. So we could right click on that template and from the drop down select new VM from this template, which we'll select. And then we can give the VM a name. And let's call this Linux VM 3. And let's go ahead and place this inside the Las Vegas data center inside the VMs folder. There's also a checkbox down here at the bottom for customize the operating system. And if we check that, as we continue the wizard, it'll now ask us to select a customization specification. So we have one. We created it in a previous nugget for our Linux VMs. So we'll click on Next. And here's the opportunity to select that customization specification. So we'll select it, click on Next. And then for this VM that we're deploying, we get to specify which ESXi host we want to place it on. Let's avoid ESXi1 because he is busy, because he's running the vCenter server appliance who's hungry for resources all the time. So let's go ahead and place this on ESXi3. So with ESXi3 selected as the host to run this new VM, we'll click on Next. And this is providing some details that may or may not be too helpful. For example, size on disk. Well, if it's thick provisioned, it'll be 16 gigs. If it's not thick provisioned, I'm not sure. Okay, so we'll click on Next. And now for the storage, we can go ahead and specify how we want to provision that. So we'll use the drop down and let's select thin provisioned for the new VM. And let's also select the NFS data store. So the library is keeping its content on the iSCSI data store. And for this specific VM, we're going to go ahead and put it on the NFS data store, just because we can. These are the three data stores that are accessible to ESXi3. And that's why they're showing up here, because we chose ESXi3 as the host. So with NFS data store selected, we'll click on Next. It's asking us what network do we want this VM to land on. So we have a couple options here. We have the original VM network and we have our new VM network. That new VM network corresponds to the 10.3.3 subnet. So we'll select new-VM network and click on Next. Here's a summary of what's about to happen, and we'll click on Finish. And then if we look at the recent tasks, that may take a few minutes to complete. And now, through the magic of editing, ta-da! It's been deployed from the template that was in our content library. So now, to verify that virtual machine is working, let's go ahead and hover over the home icon. From the drop-down, select VMs and templates. Also, let's minimize recent tasks so we can see everything better. And here in the VMs folder, we have VM3. So we'll click on that. It takes us to the summary tab for that VM. And if we wanted to launch it, we could use this icon right here to launch the virtual machine. So if we wanted to open a console to that, we could click on this to open up a console. I have my browser in full screen mode, and that's why it went full screen. And there it is. And let me go ahead and do an F11 to take this out of full screen. And if this were a Windows computer and it was doing additional configuration, it might take several minutes, including several reboots, for it to do all of its work. So once you're doing a virtual machine for the first time, you can just watch it, keep an eye on it, and then after you understand the behavior, for example, how many times it's going to reboot based on a customization specification and what was in it, then you'll know what to expect for future VMs that you deploy using that same customization specification. Also, one of the cool things I love about VMware Tools is that if we go back to the vSphere web client, because VMware Tools are running, it was part of the template, if we do a shutdown, it's a graceful shutdown of the operating system. So if we click here on shutdown and then say yes to that, and then we go back to the tab for that console, we can see that it's a graceful shutdown. It's not just yanking the power and letting the bits fall where they may. It's a graceful shutdown of the guest operating system courtesy of the VMware tools that are running as part of the operating system. So we'll go back to the vSphere web client, and now, my friend, it is your turn. So in the hands-on lab, take the opportunity to create a content library, clone a template over to that content library, and then from that template in the content library, go ahead and deploy a virtual machine. So thank you for joining me in this nugget. I'll see you in the next video. Meanwhile, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.